Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees budget meeting for April 5th, 2022. I need a motion to open this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Joe, why don't we start with the judges, because they're here first. Who'll be presenting out of the judges tonight? Both of you or one of you?
I'm going to begin. If Judge Gallagher would like to chime in, he can do that after.
Yep, I'm fine with that, but good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, Judge Zerika, it's all yours.
Okay. Good evening. We've given you a summary, which I see up on the screen, and it's no different than our standard. It basically expands upon what we have given every other year. And what really we would like to jump into is what we have written. And since we don't have the opportunity to speak with you very often, we'd like to bring that up now. Number one, we have a very valued employee, Alita Loki, who was brought in at a lower pay scale. That's number one that needs to be addressed. Number two, we have a vacancy that has been underfunded and needs to be filled immediately. And that's for the assistant clerk, court clerk, Spanish speaking. So that salary needs to be addressed. Beyond that, we have other issues we'd like to get to, but that is a pressing concern. And also the procedures that will be in place when we hopefully fill the position of the assistant court clerk, Spanish speaking. We would like an assurance that we could deal with that in an expedited fashion, so we don't have a repeat of what happened with Alita.
You could take that off the screen now, because we're not going to address that till later.
Okay, I don't know who's doing that. Yeah. Okay. So Alita needs I would say a significant bump. We normally leave this to the board's discretion, but if we don't voice our concerns here, somebody like her is so fantastic, we could lose her, and we really would be functioning at partial capacity if she were to leave. It was very hard to find her. I don't know what that noise is, but the other situation with the assistant court clerk, there was a lower salary parameter which was raised, and we found that out through Danielle, but we still aren't posting the position at the salary that the person who filled it, who was Maria Pacheco, was earning when she had it. And now when Maria filled the position, although she was bilingual, it was not initially advertised as bilingual. And now we are seeking to fill it with a Spanish speaking person, and we're putting it at a lower salary range. I don't know why that was done, but given the current hiring climate, we will not be able to fill this position. We had no resumes that were available through the civil service list. We need to put this out on the OCA website, and we're just asking that it be returned even with more than what Maria was earning, but we leave that to the board, but at a minimum, it should be at Maria's salary.
So let me just fill in some details here. Alita has been with us for a year. She started just as the pandemic was in full form in March of 2020. She came in as a clerk. She's number 2 under Bonnie, but she has stepped up and has really filled the role, and she substitutes in for Bonnie when Bonnie's not around, as she has in the past month while Bonnie's been on leave. She has a skill set that is unique, and really helps to strengthen our court. And while Bonnie's been away, for example, she's been working overtime in the evenings and the weekends just to help us keep up, because we were functioning for the past month with 2 full-time employees because Bonnie was out, and we have this vacancy that's been out there since last December when Maria left. So it's critical to us that we fill these 2, the vacancy as our 4th full-time person, and it can't be a prolonged process. We've now had the vacancy open for 4 months at the original range of salary that was set by the village manager, which maxed out at 55. The position that she's filling, or the person would fill, was Maria's position, and Maria was being paid over $63,000. So this really isn't the time for us to be reducing the salary for a position. We've been out there, it has been advertised, and we had no takers. So we asked for a range of 50 to 65. We feel strongly that that will help us. We don't necessarily have to pay the full 65. It'll be based on experience, but we don't think we can make a credible argument to the market in this situation where we all know, we read the papers every day, employers cannot hire people. They can't. I just read something about Amazon, where Amazon's actually dropping their drug testing because they're losing too many employees that they can't replace. So we ask for your assistance with this so we can help fill a spot. We're in a really tough situation. If we were to lose another employee, we would have to drastically cut back on what we're doing. I'm happy to answer any questions, as we are both about Alita, but I think the memo that we sent out a while ago lays it out in a lot of detail. And we would like to not leave it hanging out there. We really like to open up discussion if it's useful to figure out what the appropriate level of compensation is. And as the memo that we sent out to the board on Sunday indicates, we also think there should be a commensurate raise in Bonnie's pay as the chief. But I think we've covered our ground. Are there any questions about this?
Well, I just want to add one thing. As stated in the memo, Alita's salary is at $71,101. She can clearly perform the tasks of a head clerk. There has been rash resignations and retirements in the system of clerks like of Bonnie Castarella's level. If Alita was to be poached by another court, there's no question she would be hired at a salary possibly even greater than what Bonnie's earning right now. We've given in the past the salaries of the top court clerks in our neighboring jurisdictions. So we do not want to be at a disadvantage in hiring her. And we are really anxious to fill this open position. I did read Jerry's memo about the progress that's been made in the budget overall in the village. We have done our part. We have had constant vacancies in our office, and other employees have had to step up. I don't think it's a question of us being beyond our budget ever in any recent years. And with the retirement of Louise Dunaway, that left a very high level employee's position salary in the budget being removed. And we're asking for the board's immediate attention and to the issues that were raised. And yes, I'm open for questions.
Could you please, you said that you had information about court clerks in the surrounding communities and their salaries. I don't know if you shared that before, but could you share that with us?
Okay, sure. I don't have it on hand, but we can send that over.
Okay, fair enough.
But Tom, I will point out to you that there really isn't any consistency on this. Having looked at this, I can't give you the exact numbers now, but if you go to, if you go to Scarsdale, it'll be one thing. You don't know how long the people have been there. You don't know how long they've been working there and being paid there. I'm not sure that you're going to find any particularly useful information that will help you. But we can
Harrison.
That was the information that was just offered here. I'm just asking for the information that was just offered.
Yeah,
fair enough. We'll provide it.
I'm simply saying that in the end, I'm not sure that it would be particularly useful.
Oh,
The part-time position, how many hours are we talking about?
They can only work, I think it's 18 or 20 hours. It's mandated. We have no control over it. We'd love them more than that, but they can't work more than that to, if they're going to maintain part-time status.
Just by way of background, we had 2 part-time people up until last year, and then one of the part-time positions disappeared, presumably because Barbara ended up going from being a part-timer to a full-timer, and then it got removed from the budget. We're also asking that that be replaced.
Is that adequate for your needs?
With the 4 full-time people that we have currently budgeted, subject to the adjustment of pay that we're asking for, and the 2 part-timers, I think, Judge Derico, I think we're confident that that will enable us to perform efficiently and capably.
Yeah, and Trustee Young, I think the maximum is 18.5 hours. It's basically 50% of what would be considered a full-time employee.
And we've gone to the market. There are no takers at 63.
No,
Okay, all right.
No, wait a minute, we weren't
No,
offered.
no takers
no.
at 55. No
Oh,
takers
I
at
see. I got it.
so Mayor, what we should do is we should finalize right now for the budget live what these salaries should be, so that we can move forward and we can reshuffle, we can redo the analysis that gives the board the picture of where we are under the cap. That's what we should do right now. Because I think the judges I support the increase for the employees, like I said in the email Sunday night or Monday, whenever I sent it. But I think they want to know what it's going to be, and they want to know how quickly we can, how quickly the board's going to decide on this. So.
Okay, so if let's just say, for argument's sake, that if the salaries were not out of whack, we would normally offer what CSCA was getting, right?
2.5 is what the CSEA is getting, but many of those employees, except for.
No, I know. I'm just really just trying to use my head to come up with a baseline number.
Okay,
So she's getting 80s. Bonnie's been here, what, like 15 years?
Yes,
oh, yeah,
at least.
yeah, I was gonna say longer.
18, 19, something like that.
But Jerry, I think she got a bump when she got elevated, correct?
Sure did, yeah, sure. Yep.
All right, and I'm gonna, let's see, 2% of that would be.
Well,
I'm
it's
gonna-
like
I'm gonna
1,500.
I'm gonna throw out numbers here. Raise Bonnie up to 90.
Okay.
And raise, I'm sorry, what's her first name again? Elena? Alita. Up to 76.
Well, we were hoping that they would be closer because they are interchangeable. And when you did the salary raise for, which was done unilaterally for Bonnie and Louise several years ago, I mean, Louise almost went up to 100, in the high 90s, and Bonnie, has been on this track that she's on. I'm not disputing Bonnie, but Alita should be more commensurate with Bonnie. I think she was hired lower. She has done all of our translation now that we've been without the Spanish speaker. She speaks 4 languages. She does all of the computer programming programs that we need for the court system. She's a very valuable employee, and we couldn't function without her.
Yeah, I also point out with Bonnie, she actually does all the financial reporting for the court. And it's my understanding that other courts actually outsource that. So she's actually providing a very, very important function. And, just as a side note, since we, the judges, are ultimately responsible for the money that goes into the court and out, we really need to have somebody we trust in that job. And we trust Bonnie, and Bonnie is also working to educate Alita on how to handle that for the times that Bonnie may not be around.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big jump. It's a $5,000 jump. In 1 year. I mean, you can't expect to eat it all up in 1 year.
Well, Mayor, I think she was undervalued at the hire. It was such a stressful process that was the salary that was settled upon. But she's
Yeah.
been doing tasks beyond that. And I'll just add, although our position in rankings has remained the same. So we have every expectation that as we're coming out of COVID and with everything else, we're going to keep having the volume of work that we had before. So right now we've stayed on top of all of our tickets. That can't be said for other jurisdictions. We have to have adequate staffing. And I did discuss with Jerry other projects that are possible for the court. That is a whole other conversation. We cannot do any of those without adequate staffing. I don't think that she's being compensated consistent with what she's worth.
All right, I give my idea.
Well, judges, let me ask the two justices, what numbers are you comfortable with?
Well, you set the salaries. We thought it should have been
I
upwards
understand,
to.
but you know, I mean,
But you're arguing against the salary I'm proposing.
I was
um,
going to say, I thought,
no.
well, if you gave her a bump consistent with what was done with Louise and Bonnie, 3 years ago, I mean, that was extreme, and we weren't even part of that. This, I would say 5 to 7%. If 2.5 is what is normal, I think she should be beyond that.
Hey, Augie, can you do the math? What's a 5% bump for Alita? What percentage is that?
$3,600.
Yeah, I mean, I went way over 5%.
5% is 3,600.
I went $5,000 over.
5 times 7, 5 times 7, and then 5 again.
Well, you gave Maria 2,500 or 3,000 for being Spanish speaking when that was discovered after she was hired.
We
And
did.
so aside, you did.
Listen,
We did, but this is not a negotiation with me. This is a negotiation with the board now.
Okay, can I ask? The offer is 5. I mean, I hate to be doing this trading, online, but
Okay,
fine,
yeah, it is public, I forgot.
it is $5,000 on the table for Alita. What was proposed for Bonnie?
$3,000 to bring her up to 90, which was 3,300.
That's correct.
I think that we have to rely on the board to support the court, and I'm not, I always want higher for my employees. I think that that's a fair offer. Christie, I think that that's just something that if you don't think it is fair, then maybe we should go offline and talk about it.
I don't think it's
Wait,
necessary. It's a
wait,
public
guys,
meeting.
guys, I don't want any of us to get in trouble here. You brought your concerns to the board. This isn't a negotiation.
Correct.
Understood, and we're not trying to force it.
And
No.
my question to the rest of the board is, are you comfortable with that? Do you want to change that? I'm open to discussion. That was just the first numbers I threw out.
Hey, yours is a 7% increase for Alita.
So I'd like input from the board.
Well, I'm apt to defer to their, or at least give a weight to their supervisors, the judges. Apparently, Alita is very, very highly valued. Bonnie Castrella is a long-term employee who deserves a reasonable raise, and we have had issue hiring the part-time clerk at the advertised level. So I think everything needs to come up. The question is how much, and should we discuss that among ourselves?
No, we should, yeah, we're discussing it right now.
Okay.
I mean, the assistant court clerk, why don't we just go with the 63 as a range?
All right.
55 to 63.
Is that all right?
Yeah, 55 to 63.
Okay. I'm still waiting for other cast members here.
What would the others want to do?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we don't lose a good employee because we're trying to save money right now, because it's,
Yeah,
if we lose a good employee, it sets the court back, it sets Jerry back, it sets Danielle back.
Agreed.
And
That gets us back to the numbers.
right, and so if the judges don't think that 76 is enough for Alita, then maybe 77. I mean, it's sort of being penny wise, pound foolish. We do not want to be in a situation where everybody or 4 people on this call are working hard to find a replacement.
I think that that's very fair, Trustee Lucas, and I appreciate that. And we're not trying to horse trade here. And we really appreciate what the board's doing. I think that that's consistent with the interpretation boost bump that Maria got, and we really appreciate it.
And we appreciate what you're doing with little, and it's been hard for everyone the past 2 years.
Okay. If there's no objections, I'll make a motion that we move the 2 salaries to 90,000 for the more senior clerk and to 77,000 for the other clerk.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Second.
I support the increase, but I think it's unprecedented that we make motions in this work sessions. Don't we try to work through consensus? And I'm afraid then this could become a debate on this and that. It's typically we work around, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed on the budget, and that has been how it's been. But can I finish, please?
Trustee Tefor, that's not always the case, because they can't draw up the budget
Well,
until they know what the numbers are.
we find consensus, and this is not a debate. We work
Well,
around. That's the way I've worked
I'm
here
trying
and
to find
elsewhere.
consensus, Trustee
Well,
Tefor.
that's it's not, but it's just a finding agreement. For example, Nora just finished. Precisely, that's what I'm trying to say. Nora just made a good remark after I've been hearing. I heard the judges. I was about to support this. What I don't think is this should go through motions. I think it should, if we don't find a consensus or somebody reserves on A, B, and C, then we can find that. I think here we're clear. So what I don't want is to have this precedent that you're just doing motions, the budget through motions on work sessions. I think that will is kind of, I don't think it's a good thing. I think you have to see the overall picture. You have to of course find some numbers and fix some ideas so that the budget can proceed. But I don't think it should go through motions. I do support the higher number, and I really appreciate the consensus that's working here, and the judge's presentation is really very compelling. I know they've been waiting for this, so I think we should support them. But with that, so I throw my support without the need for a motion.
So we have 4 for raising it. Well, I don't know how we measure that if we don't vote on it, but
Work to consensus. That's how it's what we've done since I've seen it done many years before I was a trustee and 5 years as a trustee, and in many other boards. That's how you work on budgets. It's not just a debate.
But Trustee Tefor, that is not exclusively how you work on budgets, and that's just not the case. I'm fine if there's consensus, but you know what? I sat here for 10 minutes and none of you said anything. So
We were listening to the point of where it was
Yeah,
needed. If I'm listening and I don't need to intervene, I don't.
please, but sir, you have to be on camera when you participate. That's part of it. You know it.
Well, when I can, when it's up, when I can do it, I'll do it. I don't have to on Zoom. I don't.
But by the rules
don't.
of open meetings law, you do, sir. I'm sorry.
No, not under our Zoom rules.
And if I'm
No,
commuting or
that's
something, I'll
absolutely
try
not
to
true.
participate and do my best I can. Okay, I said my piece.
All right, Dan Ashes, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I support the consensus of what we're doing. What I'm hearing from the judges is that the individuals are performing tasks far beyond what they were supposed to do, and bringing talent in, and I think that's an important thing and always should be nurtured. So I'm in favor of it. I think that we have direction to give to the manager to adjust things accordingly. So that they can move forward on preparing changes to the budget.
Okay, so I'll change the budget for 90, 77, and then we're gonna do the range for Spanish speaking from 55 to 63,000. Now we need the board to discuss adding, as the judges asked, another part-time employee to their department, which is zeroed out in the budget right now. So we need a bulk number for that, which would give us the time that we hire that person. So if it's a full year, we would hire them in June, or if it's a smaller number, we would hire them in October or November. So we need a bulk number for that as well.
Can we just mirror what you have for the other part-timer, Jerry?
So who, Augie, can you put the thing up? I want to see.
Yes, I can. Give me 1 second.
Could I ask the judges if they could enumerate what the second part-timer would be doing? So that
Well,
the board has some idea of what the need is to be filled?
So we utilize the part-timers. They do essentially identical things. They can't handle money because they're not qualified to do that, but they answer phones and they handle administrative work like inputting information on traffic tickets and parking tickets, sending out correspondence, and assisting us on court days. It's really important that they're there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because on court days, we have 2 full-time staff members preoccupied with running, the appearances in court. So they're never there at the same time. They cover each other. In essence, they're, together they handle, it's basically 2 part-timers filling a position a couple days a week each.
and because we have a cash, situation, we have to be very careful about leaving the offices unsupervised. So you can never have a setting where a senior qualified person isn't there. And if anyone has sat in court, which you're all welcome to do, we have really gotten better about having the chief clerk sit with the judge with the computer, do things actively to reduce having to redo things afterwards. We're trying to get away from handwritten forms, and you really need a runner, so to speak, to help with copies and things of that nature. Nobody's sitting and eating bonbons. They're all active, running, working really hard, very dedicated.
Going up and down those stairs.
So
Yes,
it's
and the
15
stairs.
15, just short of 15,000, the dollar short of $15,900 would be the equivalent to the current part-timer that we have there now.
And what does that, Augie, what does that work out to hourly, just for comparison's sake? I'm imposing my expectation of your math skills because mine are extremely limited.
Give me 1 second.
$15,899 divided by 962.
I guess I should have just asked Jerry.
1650.
Okay. So that, it is what it is.
Mhm.
We're happy to have the return of that second part-timer on that same basis. We think we can fill that position at that pay range.
I think a second part-timer will help you with the busy times.
Thank you.
So, okay, so what I need to know also from the board, one last thing is the 90 and the 77 inclusive of the annual raise that all non-represented employees get, or is it exclusive of that? Because that hasn't been decided yet by the Board of Trustees. That's another thing that'll come up.
Inclusive.
Inclusive. Is there a consensus?
Mhm. Yeah, I think
Yep,
that's,
agree.
Well, is there consensus, is there consensus among the board to hire a part-timer? We haven't really.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, I mean, yes, I think that the judges have made a good case, and I think that we should, it's not a lot of money, and they're going to be once we're fully out of the pandemic, they're going to be back up to full swing.
And if you don't mind my interrupting, the way we look at it is we're just restoring the part-timer, the second part-timer that we had for years past.
Agree as well.
So the assistant court clerk vacant, the salary that's in the 2023 tentative is 63,648. That's the top of the range, okay? I just want to make sure that that's clear.
And that's already there, so that doesn't change the calculation too much.
That's correct. Does not.
And obviously, if we can't find somebody to fill the spot, we'll come back to Jerry and the board and see if there's any room to maneuver on that. But at this stage, I think we're satisfied with resuming our search with the pay that was at the level, previously paid to Maria.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank the board. And just because it's so rare that we're all together, we've had a lot of discussions. I know the building's getting work. We would just ask if there are any upcoming emergency displacements, if we could have a conversation or be part of the conversation. We're always trying to work with the concerns of the village, and we've had so many things, weather events, building displacements. But if we could be part of that conversation, because I think we are the best qualified to come up with ideas when problems arise, and it also gives us the ability to be prepared. So we're not.
Just to be specific, I'm sure there are emergency plans, that are in the works. We lost the use of the courtroom so that FEMA could run their operations out of the courtroom back in November. We learned of it literally the day of the storm that we would lose the courtroom for an indefinite period of time. So what we ask is that, as the people supervising the court, if we could be involved in any kind of emergency planning. And also, we would really respectfully ask that consideration be given to using another site besides the courtroom when this sort of thing comes up in the future. Understanding that we can't always predict how bad things are going to be, but planning would make things a lot easier for us. And I think that's pretty much it. We ate up a lot of time on these issues, but the other thing I would ask is, we really would like to have an open and constructive exchange and communication, Jerry, with you and your office. I don't know how to go about that, because I think a lot of things can be resolved with telephone calls or brief meetings. We're happy to work around your schedule, but we really do. There are times when we really need to address issues, and talking to you directly, we've always found has been constructive, and we usually resolve our issues in talking to you directly. So, situations where we're working through Danielle on personnel issues that are really higher level, it would be very helpful if you would help us arrange mutually convenient times with you to try and address some of these things.
I'll agree to have you talk to Dan Sarnoff, but I'm a moving target. Today, I spent 3 hours approving tree permits or not approving tree permits in most cases. I'm just too busy with what do I have. But if you and Dan Sarnoff and Danielle want to talk, be my guest. Go ahead and talk. Okay. I'll make the decisions as they come to me.
Yeah, but the problem frequently is that we're talking to somebody that isn't in a position to, well, the other thing we'd ask is, and this is the last ask, I think, is we spent, from the time we identified Alita as a candidate to the time she actually was hired was a year. We had that vacancy open for a year from the time that the judges settled on the person that they wanted. Now, I understand the process requires, the mayor to sign off consent on, and decide that the person is acceptable to the mayor as well. We have to find a process that works faster than that. We're looking at the case now with the vacancy that we have now. If we find somebody, I'm really hoping that the process can be streamlined, because
do you recall during that process, Judge, that Eleanor was involved in that process? And you remember that part, because that was stalling the whole thing. I was dealing with Eleanor, the person who was going to come down here, and she was made an offer to come down here, have her sick days moved down here, and all of that stuff.
Oh, that's made up. Let's move on.
we-
I don't want to hear it.
What do you mean
No,
made up? That wait, that was
No,
that
no.
Eleanor, the person who used to work for us.
No, no,
That was the stall in that part.
Jerry, I'm not, I'm just saying, let's move on. We've all been, I don't know what,
You don't wanna talk about it,
whether,
it's okay.
Right,
I get it.
right.
You don't want to
That's
talk about
enough.
it, it's
That's
okay.
enough from the judges.
But I had to deal with some person named Eleanor, who I never met, who was supposed to come down here and fill the position.
Jerry,
I like Alita. I think she's great. I'm glad she's getting a raise. I think
Jerry,
it worked
just-
out
just-
fine.
Jerry, for the record, we never made an offer. We never encouraged her.
That's different than her story, though. That's the problem is
just-
that's different than her story. I
But
believe
Jerry,
you. I don't
Jerry,
believe her. Let's put it
Jerry,
that way.
Jerry, if you're gonna believe somebody, are you gonna believe the judge?
I'm gonna believe you. I'm gonna believe a judge.
Okay, then I can guarantee you that we never made an offer. We never encouraged. her.
100%. Yeah,
Right.
just,
Okay.
let's move on.
Okay.
That's very uncomfortable. I'm glad that's the case.
Okay, enough. Let's move on. Judges, have a good night. I think you've had.
Thank you.
This is like a quit while you're ahead thing.
Yes, I understand. But thank you to the board. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jerry. We appreciate all your time and efforts on behalf of the court.
Likewise.
Good night.
Thank you. It was very productive. Thank you.
Building department, what page?
87, I think.
Page 87.
Frank?
Yes, sir. So I was going to start the presentation in a different direction, but seeing as we talked about salaries and people needing raises, I'm going to start, jump off that bridge just like the judges did. I have an assistant building inspector that's making $77,000, and he's been asking me for a year that there should be a price adjustment with his salary. And he's asking for $94,000 a year.
What's he making?
77, what is it? 77,265. He's.
And you're talking about, Frank, you're talking about Dennis?
Talking about Dennis Drogan. I'm sorry, Dennis Drogan, the assistant.
We have him at 78,030. What's he asking for?
94, which is about I think it's something like 20%, maybe a little under 20%. He does most of the plan review in the building department now. He's been very helpful to me since I came to this position, and he helps at the counter. He goes to most of the board meetings other than planning. So he's valuable to me, and I need him to stay also.
Okay.
And I realize that's a huge jump, but it's
Huge chunk. So what did you say? 90 what?
94,000 a year annual.
At 94,000, that's 16. It's $16,000 jump.
A little more than 20%.
Yeah, it's, like I said, he's referring to it as a salary adjustment as opposed to a raise.
Yeah. Wish I had a boss who could come in and advocate for me like this.
Good boss.
Well, he has been talking about it for a year, and I've been avoiding the issue, so.
All right. Well, how does the board feel about making a salary adjustment for Mr. Drogan?
Don't have enough information.
Well, we're basing it off the same, the input of his supervisor as we did with the judges.
Yeah.
Frank, maybe you should say, maybe you can tell the board a few things that Dennis does, including filling in for you. All I know is that he fills in for you because when you go on vacation, I got to deal with Dennis.
Right.
What other things is he of value for?
Well, like I said, he goes to BAR, he goes to the HDZM meeting, he goes to the zoning board meetings.
Yeah.
He does the majority of the plan review, although Kevin, our other part-time assistant, does some of that. But I would say he does the majority of it. He's very helpful, for the customers that come to the front window. He can talk to them and and reason with them when we get complaints. He's well-spoken. I mean, he's a good right-hand person to have in my office.
He is also bilingual and can help communicate with customers that some of the other staff aren't able to communicate with.
Right. I believe he's trying to get the flood certification also. He's been
Yes.
going
Yeah,
towards that.
he's asked me, and I've just like I've given opportunities to the flood mitigation committee to attend training seminars. He has asked, and I've been encouraging him to become a certified floodplain manager.
Yeah, right now our engineer has that certification. It would be good to have an employee that has that certification.
And
Again, we
actually-
got to remember to keep an eye on that August training session.
Yeah, and having a certified floodplain manager on staff earns us CRS credit. Joe Tremelli, because he's a contract employee, does not earn us that credit.
Right.
Yeah, we're supposed to have an in-house one, right?
Well, we're
Our
not
hopes are
required to
still
have
good.
we're not required to have a certified floodplain manager, but it, like I said, it does help with the CRS rating. And every little point helps when we're trying to go from class 8 to
How long
class
is, how long has Mr. Drugan been in this kind of line of work?
7.
So
No.
go ahead, Dan.
No, he's been in a number of years. I know prior to working for the village, I believe he worked for Somers. So he's had a number of years as an assistant building inspector and certified in the New York State Code. Plus, he also has a strong background in the electric code. I think he wasn't a master electrician, but he cut his chops in that trade.
So when you look at it, he's not making that much more than a code enforcement officer who just started a few weeks ago.
That's correct. And he's been here, I think, going on 3 years.
3 years.
I think it's since at least 2018.
But he's been in the trade for longer than that.
Yeah,
A
he
lot
started
longer.
out, yeah.
Is Dennis a PE by chance?
No, he's not.
No.
So what did Dan ask?
He
Engineer.
asked if Dennis was a PE, a professional engineer.
No, he's not.
Wish he was. He wouldn't be here. He would hardly be here. Well, you know what? I'm not going where he wants to go. But I'd be willing to go like, if there's a consensus to go around 84. That's a big raise.
Yeah, I mean, if he's asking for a whole reevaluation of his salary trajectory, that's something that I think would had to have been done before this point in the process.
No, we just did it for the judges here.
Well, no, we gave them raises. We
Yeah.
didn't change. We didn't change the basis. The whole. I mean, 78.7 to 94 is a huge.
No, I'm
yeah.
saying go to 84.
No, I'm in a meeting.
I'm not going to 94. That's just nuts.
What's a reasonable? Well, okay, so 84 would be what percentage would that be?
Just under a $6,000 raise.
It's a $6,000 raise.
Like 8%, maybe a little less.
It's enough to keep.
I hope it is. Yes.
All right. It is a tight labor market. Yes, Victor.
May I propose something that on this meetings, we hear this kind of issues, but following other this kind of situations in other years, we will review them, consider them, and bundle them to consider them all at some point, whether it's appropriate in executive session or not, because otherwise all these meetings are going to be around, will be a good percentage on just discussing figures, races without maybe the full information that you need. So I also think that's the way it's been handled in previous years, and I think it results properly. So, if it's just an X line and it doesn't have a person or some specifics, yes, you addressed it, but otherwise this is going to become just that review of salaries, and then well, I have concerns about that.
I agree. I mean, I think this is,
We just did it. We actually just did it 5 minutes ago.
but I think Victor's right. I think this
Correct.
is, it's not the way we've done it in the past, or at least in the past 4 years that I've done this. And we should be looking at it, if this is the kind of request, it should get put into the budget, especially if the manager thinks it's appropriate, kind of before we get to this stage. So I think think
5,000 is an appropriate number. If Dennis is having a problem, if Frank is concerned that Dennis is going to leave, I think $5,000 is an appropriate raise. $6,000 an appropriate raise. That's what I think. If you want me to put it in the budget beforehand, that's fine. But these are coming up now by department heads. The department head is advocating for their employees.
right, but I mean, I guess the department head has an opportunity to do this at the earlier stage, and maybe that's another conversation for next year, that's factored in earlier. That's all.
Okay. So next year, if we want to do that, then the department heads have to come to me and I will determine what their raises are. No problem. That's fine.
All right, Frank, move on. We understand your concern about that.
Okay, thanks. So fiscally, I think the state of the building department is now stable and improving. We just recently implemented audit procedures with the assistance from our clerk treasurer and our village manager. We're improving all of our financial check receipting, revenue deposits, applications, the intake of all our permit applications, that type of thing. And that will undoubtedly help in our profitability, hopefully. Last year, I ran some numbers on just revenues that we took in. We took in over $300,000 in building department residential permits, 300,000. We took in 172,000, over 172,000 of commercial permits. Just application fees alone, we took 50,000 in and residential permits, and another 14,000, 13 and change for commercials. So the building department, can bring a lot of revenue into the village.
Yep.
And we've done this all in the last year with the loss of a full-time building inspector, a full-time code enforcer, and a full-time planner. And this, all contributed to a loss of efficiency and ultimately revenue. So gratefully, we recently hired a full-time assistant building inspector who will be starting this month. We hired one of our local firemen as a full-time code enforcer who has extensive experience in all our locales and the general population in the village.
Frank, he thinks he's a fire chief. I think that's what he tells me.
Well, he does. But he's a little pit bull. He'll be fine in that role, believe me.
You got it. You're right.
I understand we may be hiring a full-time planner to navigate some of the complicated zoning issues in lieu of a consultant.
That's in there for July. That's in there for a July hire date.
Okay. And I think that'll be an improvement. We didn't always get, when we hire consultants, whether it be a planner or even the engineering consultant, it's not the same thing as having someone in-house. It makes a huge difference in the way everything runs. So that's something that the board hopefully will consider. The other thing is, we're trying to improve we get a lot of complaints from the public, and we're trying to improve that dynamic between the building department and the public. And I think it's going to start to trend in the right direction. Like everybody else, we were affected by two main things, the pandemic and Hurricane Ida. So we were working from home. We had to work, on alternate days. All of that really contributed. So I think, moving forward, this will get better. I'm sure it'll get better. And then finally, with the address, with the addition of Municity 5, I think our workflow and response will also improve and increase our revenue. So, and that can't come soon enough.
Frank, hold on. Augie, where is what's our annual on Municity 5? Is it 40,000? I'm trying to look for it and I can't find it. Can you look for it, Dan?
I thought it was 30,000.
I thought it was 40, but I'm looking for a number. And I should be looking for Municity and I don't see it.
I saw that.
Oh, you're in, you have to get the
Which one are we on? Because Frank has two budgets. He's got two numbers.
3620.
Where's Municity over here?
It's right here, Jerry. I have my.
462.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's even less. Okay, good. Okay. We should change that. Augie,
The second year it goes to 30,000.
okay, Augie, we should change. So, well, all right, it is what it is now, but it's just for me, but that should be Municity instead of building department software, because it's too generic.
Absolutely, I'll make that change.
All right, thanks, man.
And I'll take any questions also.
Can we get the screen back?
The planning department is part of your department?
Yes, planning is now under the umbrella of the building department.
Okay, I'd asked many weeks ago for an analysis of what we pay on AKRF for planning services versus in terms of dollars, and what is done versus a full-time cost, a full-time planner and cost.
Okay, I don't have those figures myself. Maybe Augie, do you have those?
No, we'll get around to doing that. Sure.
No, I think
Okay,
I
before the
think I
budget
responded to that.
Yeah, I thought Dan did, but
Yeah, I think the non-escrow charges were somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000.
right.
But they're Ashley is on call whenever we need her. But like Frank said, it's different from the efficiency of having someone in the office, and we are using a separate. We're talking about using a separate planner for some of the other items that we're working on that are going to be on the work session on Monday night. Yeah, I'll find that email and recirculate it.
Let me ask something. If we hire a full-time planner, can that person, can the village charge the escrow for his or her time and energy?
Yes, I think that's part of our local law that we can charge back staff time for both. I think any village employee who's a professional, which would be the engineer and the.
So
Charge their hourly rate.
So what I'm trying to get at is when we're doing this, you shouldn't just look at the time outside of escrow. You should also include the time in escrow, because it could potentially be a moneymaker.
Yeah, okay. Dan, I'm looking for it too, Dan. I don't know if you got it.
Well, let me ask a silly question then. Are we then assuming that we will not be using consultants for the commissions?
We would be sending our planner and charging escrow, because that's what we would want to do. Just like Greg was our planner and he would sit up at the board,
Mhm.
we would charge that time as well as the other time that's required to the escrow accounts for the applicants.
Right.
Okay, so then we would not be using AKRF as a consultant to the planning board or the zoning board, whatever. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. I already notified them that June 30th would be their last day. I already notified them.
Yeah, I think when we discussed this with the board, because the board actually approved by resolution their new contract. We discussed with you that the contract was good through the end of June or the end of July, then it would operate on a month to month. Anticipating that there may be a hire or full-time planner.
End of June, I think it was, Dan, but I'll take a look at it.
I would bet it's a net money maker. But I await the staff work.
Well, again, I'd like to see the analysis so we can,
Yes.
focus on that.
Right.
Dan, you and I should take a look at it tomorrow morning again, real quick. Okay,
Absolutely.
thanks. And I'll get Barbara's numbers. We'll add them in.
Frank, what else you got?
That's it. That's what I have.
No big changes other than,
Well, I mean, so we can talk about this building a little bit. We've engaged both a structural engineer and an architect to look at this building. Actually, a second engineer that's going to look at it, hasn't yet. The building, for the most part, what I'm hearing from these professionals is the shell of the building is still good, but you have to almost redo the whole interior space, more or less gut down to the original frame, the original shell of the building, and start over again. New electrical, new plumbing, new HVAC, new energy code, bring it up to ADA standards, all of that. Which is going to amount to a good amount of money, but we're going to have to do some kind of analysis of whether you do that or you do something different with the building.
the amount of work doesn't necessitate ADA compliance and an elevator?
If you
Yeah.
want to bring the building up to code, the stairwells are not wide enough. We don't have an elevator, there's just a myriad of things that,
And it's so much work, you have to be ADA compliant.
yeah,
It's-
yeah.
The
It
percentage,
passes the threshold.
60%.
Yeah, and
It
if
passes the
you're,
threshold, right?
and if you're basically going down to the studs, it turns the shell, it buys you a little more opportunity to do certain things there.
Well, they also were, to put all of the village in one building, if that's possible, it would involve probably an addition to this building. And one of the ideas was to go over the courthouse, go up from over the courthouse.
Right.
From what I understand, a couple of years ago, they had a proposal to go out the back. That was before they put that trailer that they did, I don't know how many years ago, 6, 7 years ago. So we're trying to gather all that information, all the original plans, and come up with the correct solution to this building, because something has to be done. We've remediated all the mold that was in the building. That's just about cleared up now. However, if we don't do anything, the mold will come back. So, we kind of bought a little time. We put a Band-Aid on it temporarily, but something should be done with the building.
Trustee Natchez?
Yeah, just so there was another alternative to go out towards the library and take advantage of the different grades, which would be a lot less expensive and, much more productive.
Well, I asked the architect to come up with a few different scenarios. One to go over the courthouse, one to go out the back, towards the back street here, which I guess we own right up to that, what was originally a paper street, that's now a street.
We went up to the church.
Johnson Street is not a
Yeah.
street.
Right. It's
Yeah.
not a street,
It is not a public street.
but we own that property. Is that
We
correct?
own the property, and
Yeah.
the property is actually quite large.
Right. So there is a few, they are going to come up with a few different scenarios, and we're gonna, see what the options are.
Trustee Young?
Yeah, Frank, how does the cost of working inside the shell compare to taking the building down and building something different?
So we don't have all those costs yet, but that's going to be one of the first things we're going to try to determine. Whether if you take it down to the shell, if that's only a small amount, then doing a whole new building, the difference between the two, then maybe you may opt to do something different. But we don't have those figures yet. We're at really the preliminary stages.
So it might be cheaper just to start over.
It might be, but I can't even make that statement. I mean, there's so many variables, we need a lot more information to come to that conclusion.
Would the courthouse structure support something built on top of it?
Well, that's something that the structural engineers have to.
Oh, okay,
figure
all right,
out.
so we don't know yet.
Yeah, we're,
No, but
yeah.
I think it may have been designed by Mr. Gedney back in the late 50s, early 60s.
No,
No, it wasn't?
no,
Yeah, so-
it was somebody else who lived in Mamaroneck who had a house on Soundview.
Okay,
And it's long gone.
yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Frank?
What,
Yeah, go
what,
ahead, sorry.
do we have any idea of what the funding sources would be for this new village hall? Is it simply something the village is going to cover through bonding? Or is it something where we might be eligible to get, grants considering it's a police station?
I'm not sure. We can easily bring that up with our grant writers to see if they're aware of any police station type or public safety type grant that's available to us. Yeah, that would be
Well,
great.
I'm just saying, if there is going to be any state or federal funding involved in this project, then if the building is going to be demolished, we're going to have to do the kind of documentation and recordation that's happened with the Hillside Avenue Bridge. So just,
Yes.
we should be aware of that.
So-
You have to make the case for why the building would be, because the building is determined eligible for the National Register. So
We shouldn't knock down the building. We should
Well,
gut the building and
I-
we should build a new village hall behind it so we
Well,
can repurpose the building. That's what we should do.
I think that's absolutely one approach, and that's
Yeah.
that's one of the alternatives that we have to examine.
That would
And
be
you know
great.
me, that would be the alternative I would prefer.
Yeah, me too.
But whether or not we do that, if there's any kind of a grant involved, we just want to be sure that we check the boxes, because we would have to deal with the fact that the building was on the National Register. So just, but again, if we could find a lot of grant money, it's worth that trade-off.
Nora, is it on the National Register?
It's
No.
determined eligible for the National Register, so for all intents and purposes, it's the same.
When did that happen?
Oh, I don't know, years ago. I mean,
Yeah,
I
think,
can look on the website, but it's been determined eligible for the National Register. So if state or federal funding is used, you have to make the case for why you would be demolishing the building if you chose to demolish the building.
Yeah, it may have been in the early 80s when Westchester County
Yeah,
Planning Department did that analysis in every single municipality.
there was a survey done, and slowly but surely buildings got determined eligible. So I mean, it's not, it's not, it isn't a showstopper. It's just something, it's just another factor to consider.
But, okay, I guess my question, and this is off topic, but does the building have to have historical significance, like, something had to happen there, or, or is it just, it was a municipal building and because of its age, do you know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, yes, and there's a series of criterion under which a building is determined eligible for the National Register, and it has to do with what the history of the building within the community, the architectural style of the building. So there are a lot of different factors, but in this case, it doesn't matter. It's been determined eligible for the National
I
Register.
understand.
That's what we go with.
I was
If
just-
we're using state or federal funding for the next stage, then we'll have a review from the State Historic Preservation Office. If we're not, we won't. And That's aside from whether, the consultants decide that it's cheaper to, keep the shell and restore the inside. I'm just saying, if we're eligible, if we're gonna get grants, I don't want to delay the process
Yeah.
by not having taken those recordation steps earlier on. That's all.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Being prepared.
All right, Frank, thank you for your input tonight. Thank you for everything that the building department is doing. It's not an easy job, I know that. But you're vital to the health and safety and welfare of the community. Everything your men and women do ensures the safety of us all. So you have a vast responsibility thrust upon you, Frank. Thank you for everything you do.
There you go. Now you can sleep better at night. Thanks, Frank. I'll see you tomorrow. Frank and I talk every day, all day.
I do have a question on the planning change, because I was not aware of it. Do you think you have two months is enough to make the change? It's been difficult since I've been here.
Mhm.
And is the planning chair that really takes input and prepares so that all that load gets processed. Has that been already discussed? And is there a transition plan in place?
Yeah.
Because I do have that concern, and I just do want to reserve on that until I hear that this is really going to move smoothly instead of being another bump. So while I appreciate the interest of moving in that direction, I think there should be either a transition or know how to use that planner that is actually an escrow planner. Because I think also, if I recall correctly, in order to use escrow for employees, there has to be some intermediate step. So I think the transition has to be discussed, and I'll reserve on that point.
But the way the board approved the contract is that the contract would in essence end at the end of June, and then we would go month to month with our planner until our transition is complete and we have that comfort level. As far as what you're asking, we'll take a look at that step, because I'm not 100%
Something
on
is
it.
needed, and also
I gotta look at that.
A couple of things of my questions have not been answered. Has this been discussed with the planning board? Are they aware of this? Is there a plan, a transition plan? And if so, can we hear that comfort zone?
Yeah, so I can tell you that the zoning board would be happy. The planning board, they love who we have already. So we've discussed it with the chairs.
I think embarking upon charging for the planner, it's an interesting concept, but it's more than the planner, because what was passed encompassed a whole bunch of issues with this and staff. And I don't know that it is wise to selectively go through that. So it's a whole big issue.
I don't understand what you mean.
I don't either. Charge other staff members?
It covers more than just the planner. It covers all staff.
So if there's a mechanism to charge all staff, I can, but then there's fees, then the fees come into question.
And
Whether
that's
what's
the
the fee?
question. And that's the question. Most municipalities charge everything through the fee. The bill, we raise the fees pretty high in relation to other municipalities, which is fine. But I think we need to, before we just do this, that's one of the reasons I asked for the analysis, so we can try and understand it and see what is actually the most meaningful way of doing things that's the fairest of all to our residents.
So we've had a planner in the past, and then we had an assistant planner. If that didn't work out too well, I'm not exactly aware of it, but when I replaced that individual, we replaced him with someone who just wasn't up to the job. So I was forced to go to a consulting planner. We could stay with the consulting planner model if the board's comfortable, but we'll provide you the analysis to give you that information. But it's a comfort level as well.
Part of it is a financial decision and part of it is an operational decision.
Mhm. Operationally, we
I
would-
just don't have enough information at this point to agree that one route is better than the other.
To add to what I was saying, I was on the board when the escrow change was done and the possibility of having us charge or the village charge for staff was inserted. There was it required additional work, and I think in order to do that, you need to involve the village attorney and maybe at least the village attorney and some expertise on how to charge that. But that has never been used, and I'm not sure what the steps are. But that should be really nailed in the next few days, if possible, so that if staff's proposal wants to move forward, that should be cleared.
And then Jerry, just consult with the village attorney tomorrow and see what those mechanisms are under our law.
Okay, so, but
Bring it back to us.
but when Greg was working for us and advised the board about certain applications, we were eating that cost. We weren't
No, it's
charging
about-
his time.
Yes.
No, we're talking about charging third parties, not the board. I mean,
How
not
about the escrow?
It's the escrow, yes, it's third
Right.
parties.
But what would happen now, if we wanted to do a zoning change like the extensive one we did, or any updates to our code, we'd have to hire an outside consultant, which is expensive. Mr. Cutler handled that. Spent a lot of time on it.
But
But
that's,
we went back and forth on many issues, and he did many different analysis.
When Mr. Cutler, Mayor, when Mr. Cutler attended the 6 meetings a month that he sat up at the dais or down below advising the boards, that time was not chargeable to the applicant, which it is now because we have a consultant doing that work. We don't eat that cost when we hire AKRF to sit up there and advise our boards.
I understand that. And you're conflating things. What I was talking about is when we were doing a zoning change, right?
Oh, those kinds of things, law
Yeah.
changes. I see.
Law
I-
change. And
I see.
you weren't here when we did PLLC.
yes, he
and,
was.
I was
Mr.
here.
Cutler-
He was. Jerry was here.
I was here. Yeah, I was here.
Jerry was here.
It was the longest 8 months I've ever spent in municipal government. Yes.
Well, it started way before that.
Okay, so I was,
Our code says the cost of professional services provided by the village's professional staff will be at hourly rates based upon the actual salary and benefits paid by the village as determined by the village manager.
we
So
have that.
staff has to keep track and send a bill to the village.
We have that.
And then that, basically, they have to create like a timesheet and That's how it gets
doesn't
filled
seem
out.
hard to do.
And that Barbara would do that. Barbara would do that. She's in the planning office and she works for Frank. Frank, there's no problem. I don't think that there's a problem, Barbara, having that response. She's totally capable of doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
But that
we
would
can send it
offset
out.
the
But she
cost
handles
of
our
that.
escrow now. She handles our escrow now. So she
That
handles
would
all of that.
offset the cost of that employee.
As far as support staff, trustee Natchez, as far as support staff, it gets a little dicey because we're charging fees and the fees have to pay for something, right? So
Mhm.
it's hard to,
That's
navigate that.
that's part of the issue of the analysis that has to be done.
okay,
And I don't think you can say that support staff are providing professional services.
Yes.
I agree with that.
It's not, it's a
So,
whole
and that's,
different
and
together.
the code is specific about professional services.
yeah,
Exactly. Good point. Norm.
yeah.
All right,
Okay, great.
Frank, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Gary.
Frank.
Okay,
Hey,
thank
Frank.
you. Thanks.
Live long and prosper. Okay, we were gonna wait for,
Budget committee.
they're here, but, Charles, and I don't
Charles
see Charles
isn't
on.
here. Unless Charles is owner.
He said it would be 6:30.
Let me give him a call.
Glenn with 2 N's has his hand up.
Mhm.
You have Glenn, you have Ed, and you have Len.
Yeah, I see who's on, then. I'm just seeing if Charles is owner.
I'm making a pitch.
Hey, Charles, how are you? Good. How we doing here, pal? We're waiting for you. Okay. No, I'll get off, you get on. Okay. Charles is gonna be a couple of minutes. He just got home.
Well, Glenn had his hand up, right?
Hey, Glenn, what do you want to say? Hold on, I got him. Oh, didn't know he moved his hand. Darn it. All right, Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. Jerry might be able to answer them. With the building department, currently we have an assistant village vacant. Has that been filled, or are we filling it? That would be on
Yeah, that's being filled.
okay, but it's currently open and that's being filled. Then Kevin Johnson, that was 0. I would assume that position is now being done. That was moved from a different department. Kay Johnson.
Oh, that's Karen Johnson. She was,
Yeah, Karen. Yeah.
I think she was transferred from our office to the village. I don't see the budget in front of me, so
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's page 76.
yeah, I'm
And we currently have 1 code enforcement part-time vacant. Are we just leaving that vacant?
I think they're looking for somebody.
Leaving it vacant.
We are leaving it vacant.
Yeah, we're leaving it vacant.
Okay, thank you. And then just one thing that Jerry said that kind of resonated with me. Jerry was mentioning that he was busy with tree permits for 3 hours.
Yeah,
We got to get somebody else to do that. Jerry's time is too important to be having a village manager doing 3 hours on trees and the justices can't reach them. That's, I think Jerry's skill level and pay level is much above that. And, we're just going to have to come up with a formula that Jerry doesn't need to be, doing the trees. So thank you.
Write that
Mayor
down.
Charles Guadagnolo is.
just
is-
popped up. I see his name there. C.
All right.
Guadagnolo.
Make them, I got it. Okay, good at this. Charles, when you unmute yourself, you're ready to go. Charles? Mute Glenn here. Charles? He was just got on and had to take the coat off. This is the death of radio is dead air.
Can't have dead air. I've seen that on Frasier.
Yes. Nature pours a vacuum. Charles? I'm gonna start telling stories.
They better be true.
There's
Well,
truth in them.
if he's not on, doesn't matter.
Never let the strict adherence to truth ruin a good story.
We used to say in television.
That's what he used to say. Lou.
In the newscast.
Don't confuse me with facts.
Charles?
Hey, Len.
Hey, Charles, you in?
All right.
All right, you're on.
I don't know why I have no audio.
Okay.
Maybe I should keep it on my phone line. I can call in on the phone number too.
Now it sounds like it's working.
We hear Glenn, but maybe that's just me.
You want to call in?
Yeah,
Why don't you call my cell phone? And I'll put you on speaker.
He'll be speaking to you right now. System.
Go ahead,
Oh, speak.
Charles can't hear
can
us.
you guys hear me? I'm sorry. I don't know why you're not coming through on my end.
We can hear you.
He
We
can't
can hear
us.
you, but they
He
can't.
can't hear us, he said. He's saying we're not coming through on his end.
So I am just joining, obviously, and don't know what was thus far discussed this evening, nor at last week's meeting, which wasn't posted, but I've gotten some feedback from the group about where we're at. Sorry, we had the echo going on.
This isn't working. I'm gonna call Charles.
Hey, Tom.
Okay, you can't hear us, is that the case?
Correct.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Mute your screen, and I'm gonna put you on speaker.
Great.
Okay, or you mute that.
Oh, he's gotta mute his machine.
Yeah, he just muted. Mute that.
He's done.
All right, Charles.
Great, thanks. Sorry about the confusion. So I think that, the purpose of the budget committee presenting tonight is to kind of recap the process in the context of the planning principles of project evaluation criteria documents that prepared, some of the perspectives in that document we're going to be the process over the next few weeks. So in short,
All right. This isn't working. This isn't working.
We can't really hear.
Charles, this isn't working. Charles, go out and come back in on screen.
Let me come over.
Sounds like a whale or sonar.
Well, one is that drive over.
Okay, let's get this.
No, your mic is on. That's probably what was creating the problem.
You want to try getting on one more time from Zoom? If that doesn't work, we're going to try the phone again. So just try getting on one more time from Zoom. Okay, he's going to call in the phone numbers. Okay, thank you. Killed by technology. Just so you know.
Well, do we want to let Glenn talk?
Or Lynn, either one.
He's getting on.
I don't think Glenn's hand was up, but Glenn's was.
All right, that 914 number.
Yes.
All right, Charles.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now
better.
we can, yes.
Great. I apologize. I really don't know why I couldn't hear you guys. Anyway, did you catch anything that I started with, or would you like me to start over?
Start all over. Start all
Start
over.
over, please.
Great. Thanks for having us. The purpose of the budget committee, looking to speak tonight was to summarize the documents that we've, shared over the last couple of years, which is our capital budget planning principles and project evaluation criteria document. Highlight a couple of bullets, through the document that hopefully can be of use in the process over the next few weeks in an effort to arrive at adopting a budget. I thought it would be worth also starting with that, off topic, but with respect to the operating budget and my having listened to some of the presentations, it's really encouraging to see where we're at with that. That really came together well, and there's probably some lessons learned, from that process that we can apply to this one, because it was just a great team effort, and I think we really are where we want to be with that. Obviously, there's always items to address, but I just wanted to say great job, and
Thank you.
it's just fantastic. With respect to the capital budget, I think just it probably goes without saying, but just to start with what our goal and objective is at this point. And it's basically we want to be able to adopt a capital budget and have it reflect priorities in the context of what we can afford to do. And I know that sounds very obvious, but that's very challenging when there are a lot of things that need to get done, and a lot of people have different ideas about what the priorities are. And there are a lot of different ways of approaching what the priorities are. And there are a lot of different ways of approaching what we can and can't afford. So what the document that we've circulated that was incorporated into the first few pages of the budget last year, which was appreciated, it's a guide, it's a framework. I think it's critical to have flexibility in life and in a process like this. So these are guidelines, they're targets, they're principles, and just to be able, with lots of different people being engaged in this effort, to be able to refer back to something that is a framework can be helpful. So, within that, the document, has a priority framework, and it has some examples of ways in which we can approach what it is that we can and can't afford. So we've seen, I think, over the process last year, and probably where we're at now in this year's process, is that we've got a list of lots of different projects that we would like to consider, and we have priority frameworks that we've utilized, both the basic 1 through 5 framework that was essentially through the controller's office that we included in the document, and then really one of the first times I ever met Jerry, we sat down and he walked me through, when he came aboard, an objective to really be able to get departmental input in this process and be able to incorporate that into our ability to set priorities. And, that process has been developed. There's a ton of input from department heads, indicating what they believe, they need and we need. And with that, that's being presented to us. And that leaves this group of people with the challenge of being able to make tough decisions about literally where to draw the line and to be able to have a real budget. And, on our last call of the budget committee, Augie had pulled up an example that, he and the staff had arrived at, I think, last year, where this list of projects that were under consideration, were able to be consolidated down into a finite list that was within a set of parameters of what we think we would be able to afford, and was something that we may have been able to move forward with. So it's an example of us seeing and knowing that we can arrive at that end product, and then it's a question of how we get there. So I think the idea of being able to draw the line at a point that we, you guys, mutually agree is reasonable, whether that be just with precedent where our debt service has come in. We in the document that we shared used an $8 million number that would at the time have kept the debt service in line with what it was historically. We had thrown around 7.5% of the operating budget number through the controller's office as a guideline. All of that being said, as we look at the list of projects and try to draw a line somewhere in that ballpark, there are probably going to be other projects that you guys consider being necessary. And then that's part of the process of being able to collectively determine what kind of flexibility we would consider with respect to that debt service number. So working through that, having an idea of where that line gets drawn, then working through the process of understanding how the priorities were identified across both, the state suggested 1 through 5 criteria, and then staff and departmental feedback, Jerry's input about things that, might not be a 1 or 2 at the state level, but need to get done. Share that information so we understand why it's under consideration. Have those in the list approaching that line that we're drawing, trying to come to an agreement of where the line gets drawn and what's above it, and then taking the things that are below it and putting them off to the side, and having our budget and spreading those projects over their lifespan of however many years. And that's a very heavy lift in the next few weeks. But again, we've seen that it's doable. There were examples of that you seemingly arrived at last year, and that's the work now over the next few weeks. It's in front of us. There's a framework. Not everybody's going to agree about what those priorities are, but to be able to work through them and try to arrive at that objective. I think that's where I'm coming from, and I think where the committee is, hoping we can go over the next few weeks to have that budget. And, if not, it's where we ended up last year, was having all of the projects listed and having to navigate them throughout the year, which makes it very difficult to manage and to prioritize and track live throughout the year. And we've managed through that type of methodology, and it's very difficult. And we would ideally like to be able to not have to do that again, and to be able to draw the line and arrive at a finite budget.
Okay, thank you. I understand the motivation, and I applaud the motivation. But the hard part in government is always, the word finite, right? Because government is often fluid, and we have, emergencies. We have, buildings that all of a sudden are falling apart. Not all of a sudden, but it's falling in our lap, right? And I agree that, we ought to watch this very carefully, but all of this is based upon the cap, right? It's staying under the cap. And there might be a time that we just have so much that needs to be fixed in this village that we're going to have to go over the cap. if we want to have a functional village. And, that's just not, based upon budgetary requirements. It's based upon, what is going on in this community, the decay that has been left to insidiously burrow in both in our sanitary sewer, our storm sewer, the need for sidewalks in this community, the deteriorating state of our buildings, seawalls that are crumbling. This is all important stuff. And I don't know why a trustee would smile about that, but it is very important stuff. So I'm afraid of putting a finite number and saying we can't go above that, because
I wholeheartedly agree, actually. And when I say finite, I mean from the perspective of a presentable budget that had a line drawn with a dollar amount as a total targeting where we want it to be, but that recognizing that, that's going to be fluid throughout the year, and that we should have flexibility with respect to what that number should be relative to what's in front of us. So I'm certainly, very cautious about ever completely limiting us to a number. It's just taking those guidelines to try to determine where to draw the line, but then, affording us the flexibility to remain fluid given, what we need.
great. No, I just want to ask staff, exclusive of library, water fund, and sewer fund, in the operating budget, which is what we're talking about here, what is the percentage of debt payment that we currently experience?
5.67.
We're at 5.67 right now. Okay, because those other funds, obviously the library pays for themselves with their own taxes. Sewer is paid for out of the water rates, and the water is paid for out of water rates. And just one thing that's in your memo that has changed is you talk about the Army Corps of Engineers, and I just want to point out, because of the way Senator Schumer got the funding through the Ida recovery bill, we are no longer on the hook for that $8 or $9 million. That doesn't change the essence of this discussion, but I just want to point that out, that is a big load off our plate that we had counted on doing before. Okay, so
Huge.
So I think that, Tom, to your point about whether we would be going over the cap at any point, tying the debt service to a percentage the percentage is a target, but if we went over the cap, the actual amount would be higher. So, I think that we talked about it when we talked about the capital budget last Wednesday, that we can't afford to do everything that's on our list. We just can't.
I'm not
I
saying we
think-
can. I never said we can.
So I think actually delineating, what we have to do, I think that the controller's guidelines are good because they help give us a framework. It may not be everything we need, but it gives us a framework. I think we've made significant progress in getting towards a 5-year capital budget. And I think we now really need to adopt a budget. And I know it's not quite ready, but adopt a budget that, kind of has a bright line. This is what we can realistically do now and in the next 5 years. And these are the things we're really going to have to wait for unless we can figure out a different way of doing it. And I think it's just a matter of using this as guidance. It's not set in stone. I don't think the budget committee is asking us to draw a hard line, but to draw some kind of line. And I think we need to do it.
What is the action you think we need to take? I'm just a little confused.
I think we need to figure out what we're going to be doing, how much we're going to be spending this year in debt service. we might want to spend more than we had considered because it's maybe a little bit cheaper to borrow money now than it might be in the future. We want to think about that. Think about what we're going to have to do. I mean, I don't think we're going to be in any way ready to fund a village hall project right now. We don't know what the project is, so we can't think about that. But really go through and do what Charles suggested. Get that line of these are the projects that are on the capital plan that we can do, and these are the ones we can't do.
So just to clarify, and you're talking about future projects. Obviously, what we've already committed to in debt, we have debt. Right?
Absolutely, yeah, but we're also talking about, I mean, you know, Jerry's done a priority list, staff has done a priority list. Jerry asked us today to do another priority list. I think this is the 2 weeks where we, you know, we look at the priorities and we really take, and it's not written in stone, but I think we need to take a hard look because there is so much that we have to do.
But that number won't affect this year's capital. Okay, I got you. That number will not affect this year's capital outlay. It'll
Well,
affect.
I think if we talk about the target, if we talk about the target that the budget committee recommended last year, which was 7.5, we're actually under that.
I understand. I know,
So-
but I'm just trying for clarification. Please let me finish. What I'm saying is, what's in the budget now is in the budget because that is already encumbered debt. Okay, I'm just and I'm saying this, Nora, not to be argumentative, just for clarification.
I may.
But I think we're going to be spending some money that we haven't committed yet. So I think this is the time where we really think about what the projects are. But yeah, I mean,
right.
Tom, I guess what I'm saying is maybe. Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying, yeah, and that we're not going to renege on anything we've committed to doing, but we haven't committed.
That's what this budget reflects. This budget's numbers on capital outlay reflect what's already been bonded. That's my point.
Right, but we have to think about how we're going to construct it going forward.
Move forward in the future. Okay, I'm fine with that. Trustee Natchez.
Okay, I think what the budget committee has asked for, and we talked about it on last Wednesday, is adopting a policy. The policy is in two parts. One is the 5 points of how to rank the different projects so that we have some idea of, the magnitude of, in terms of priorities. And the second is they've suggested a guideline of 7.5% of the operating budget. And in my interpretation of that, which we should include, is that should not include any amounts that are portions of the capital project that are being funded by non-village sources. So if you, for sake of discussion, if you have a bridge that costs $3 million and we're getting $2 million in other grants, it would be $1 million that would go into the calculation, that you would be applying the 7.5%. It doesn't mean that 7.5% is a specific limit. It is a guideline. And if you go over it, you just have to have justification of what you're doing and take a hard look. If you're under it, the same thing.
And where are we now, Augie?
A lot of
5.95. Okay. All right. So I want to know, I also want to have in the future, let's have more discussion of why 7.5 is a viable.
5.67.
What?
5.67.
And I want to hear from our bond counsel, if we adopt a number like that, does that affect our bond rating?
It's a good question to ask, but I can't understand how a guideline would affect the bonding.
Well, let's let them answer it, okay?
I see other hands up. I think Len may have.
Yeah, we're going to go to somebody besides Glenn. We're going to go to Len Aubrey.
I said Len. Thank you.
I'll pick who we go, Dan. Let me run the meeting.
This is Len. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Len.
Yes.
Hi,
Hi, Len.
everyone. How are you? The first thing I'd like to do is talk about the 7.5% because I was the one who calculated that and wrote the draft of the initial document a couple of years ago. But so the calculation was based upon, I think at that time, either the tentative or the adopted budget for fiscal 2019. If that calculation was 7.5%, I looked at what the state controller was talking about. And so, you know, they were talking up around that number to about as maximum of 10%. And that's the first point. The second point is the number also was consistent with what Augie had said, told us at the time. Augie said that the village can finance anywhere from $4 to $8 million in new capital projects annually. So, okay, our history in terms of village funded projects was that much or less. So that seemed like a reasonable number at the time. Now, over the last 5 years since fiscal 2019, up to and including the tentative budget, that percentage has gone, it was steady until about 21, and then it's, as I calculated the 7.5%, and as I calculated it for the 2023 year, that number for 2023 is 7.9%. I just take from the budget message that Jerry prepared, the summary table, look at the debt service, look at the total budget. It's not a terribly complicated calculation. And so the number for 2023, which as Tom rightly points out, reflects, I believe, the 2022 projects, is 7.9%.
But Augie just told us it was 5.9.
I'm describing the method of calculation I used for the 7.5%.
Okay, but
I'm being consistent across years.
I understand that, Len, but I want to know from Augie how he derives his number.
The current principal and interest payments in general fund is 5.6% of the annual operating budget of 41 million. So in the
Okay,
general fund, we have
okay, hold on.
principal and interest payments.
Yeah.
Take those payments, take our total operating budget in the tentative budget, which is 41 million, divide it by that, and you get 5.67%.
Yeah, Augie, just so we're clear, the number under debt service in the 2023 budget, as I see it, is $3,256,000. If that's,
Let me get there, Len, 1 second.
yeah, it's in the budget letter there from Jerry.
So I'm looking at the budget book. And I'm
Yeah.
on page,
It's the page that has the,
page 262 in the budget book.
it has, no, page 5 in the tentative budget for
We're at page
2023.
Okay, so let me go to page 5, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I mean,
I'm
it's the
on
one that
page
has
5.
it's the one that has the colorful pie chart on it.
Great. So I'm on page 5 and you're looking at,
At the top of the page, at least this is the document I picked up from Sally.
I think, Len, one of the points we made was that some of that debt is supported by revenue, which includes the library bond, which we're responsible for, sewer and water.
I'm not
Right.
sure because those are cited separately in the document. But
I think
I think I don't think, quite frankly, I think we could go back and, you know, chat about that. But that's one issue which, quite frankly, I think I'm only speaking for myself now, do not believe is the most critical. It's very important. We have to straighten it out because all other things equal, you don't want your debt service crowding out other more critical expenses. But it looks like, as Charles said, we're not in bad shape at all in the coming year. But I think the important issue initially is what was discussed about priority setting, in which Tom and certainly Nora and Dan and others have expressed interest in. Now, in the tentative budget, there's the capital budget and capital plan pages that lists 133 projects covering the 5 years, in which the backup documents about 260 pages. When I asked Sally, I said, "Oh, do you have the capital budget?" And she said, "Sure," and handed me a book with 262 pages. Now, quite frankly, my own opinion is the board should take a look at that page that has the projects over the 5 years. And quite frankly, I think Jerry and his team should say, here's what we can afford. Here are the top priority projects from the village manager and the village team point of view. They're both mostly equipment, vehicles, as well as some critical construction projects. And share that with the board, simply because it's difficult to have a conversation about 133 projects, quite frankly. There are some obvious, some big ones, like the ones that Tom mentioned. The second important piece, besides the priority setting, is the ability to execute the projects during the fiscal year. Clearly, flooding is a major topic, and it appears there are projects in that list related to the flooding, like the Tompkin Avenue Bridge or Halsted Avenue. Those are critically important. And it's important that the village had the ability to execute the projects, not just have it on a list, execute it on a timely basis within the budget. So what I'm suggesting is kind of a two-step process, simply to make it manageable. Have the village manager identify a list of priority projects, which could go to, quote, the affordable and doability line past it, and then share it with the trustees. The trustees provide their input by saying, you know, there's a number 122 project on the list, which we think, or I think as a trustee, is very important. And that's a discussion that takes place. But so I'm trying to get at the point about it is important to adopt a capital budget. It also is important to have some flexibility, understanding, as Tom says, that things happen and that inevitably there'll be a something happen during the year which requires a capital expenditure. And in my own experience in doing these types of budgets, is you'd always put an amount in and say, this is a contingency amount because something's going to happen. So the key point here is there's three critical points. One is establishing the priorities. One is ensuring that we have the staff and the capability to execute the projects on time and on budget. And then thirdly is, can we afford all of this within our debt capacity? And we do have ample debt capacity and without seriously affecting the operating budget.
Okay, you know, I think you make good points, but I think one of the issues that we have to clarify, and it's best to clarify right now, is the numbers that we're working off, right? You're using the budget message, but the real number that we're working on is on page 262, 2022, 2023 fiscal year. The amortization, I'm sorry, 1.686 million. interest of 650, which brings you to a total of 2,342,876. I think Jerry's number had library in it and it had water in it, which, you know, shouldn't be in the regular budget. So I think that that's where the discrepancy comes from. And I think that that is the real number for this budget. And I think you made a lot of salient points and you were cogent. And I think we're all pretty much on the same page here, but I just want to make sure that we're all using the same numbers.
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right, Tom, because I think the number in the budget summary has the library money in it.
Yeah, and we're still paying off that library.
Yeah. Now, obviously, that's, you know, that's covered. That debt service is covered.
That's right. It's paid for by the library.
You're absolutely right. However, the only comment I made about that is if we established, or the budget committee initially had the 7.5%, it's consistent across the years. Yeah, I hope I'm being clear. In other words, it was included in the 7.5% and it's included in the 7.9%. So it's consistent across the years.
I get it. I'm just, the reason I'm pointing out, Len, is that I have found over the decades that Mr. Fusco is very rarely wrong when he gives me numbers.
Yes, I don't doubt it.
That's why we keep him around.
Thank you.
No. That's totally fair. Totally.
Thank you, Len. I'm going to go to, there's a person on here called Owner. I don't know who that is. And I always love a surprise. He had his hand up. Owner? Does anybody know who that is on the budget committee? Somebody that owns a business, perhaps. Somebody that
Can you unmute yourself,
unmute
Owner?
yourself, Owner.
It's Ellen. I must have logged on incorrectly. Can you hear me?
I can hear you,
Okay.
Ellen. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Oh, good. I'd like to add a couple of things. Len covered a good chunk of what I wanted to say. But I do want to point out when we did the rewrite of the capital framework after we got the staff feedback as well as the board feedback, I believe we took out that 7.5% guideline and stated clearly, which I think we did the first time, that at the end of the day, it's up to the board as to whether we want to stay within the cap or not. You know, it's a decision based on what the village needs.
Correct.
That's one point. The other thing is all of our projects aren't funded by our debt service. I mean, Dan Sarnoff did a phenomenal job this past year in all that grant money we kept getting. I'm assuming we're going to continue to get grant money to help fund the projects. And our general fund is very, very healthy, and that can help avoid some future debt if needed. You know, it's a good thing for us to be able to rely on. So what I think, which both Len and Charles have stated, to me, what one of the most important things is probably more for Jerry, is that we have a game plan of what we're going to do in terms of projects this year and next year. It's the operating plan isn't just a fiscal plan. It should be a game plan of what this village is going to do. So even though we may be doing projects this year and the debt or whatever the funding is won't hit until next year, I think Jerry needs to know, Jerry and staff, you know, the other department heads need to know what the board's approving so we can move forward with whatever the projects are. And we know it's the best guess at this point in time, you know, based on the priorities and what the board approves, and emergencies are going to come up that may knock something off. But I think the work that Jerry and company have done in prioritizing is something that we should take a look at and approve. or not approve, but have the discussion and agree to the game plan as part of the budget approval process. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ellen.
Mhm.
Let's go to Glenn one more time. Hi, Glenn.
Good evening. A lot of the points were touched on. The debt service is absolutely correct. I was going to tell you that an hour ago. The way you have it working right now is this year's budget is previously bonded. Next year's budget is going to be projects that have been approved and paid for within this fiscal year. Then Augie will bond them. Anything you do this year, budget-wise, you're not going to see affect the debt service for 2 years for the budget, at least, depending on when the projects get done. What does need to get done is, because we've had a lot of delays with COVID and such, is how much have you actually approved that has not yet come in, and what projects have come in, so you can have an idea of next year's debt service. As for the 7.5%, you can say 7.5%, you can say 8%. All that should be is a trigger that you look at where your debt service is going and decide how to pay. You can either pay by debt, you can pay by fund balance, you can pay by raising funds, or you can decide that the project is so important that, you know, we're going to allow our debt to go up a little bit higher than historically done, but this is our 5-year plan to bring it back again. That's all they're looking at with the capital. What you're doing now, I think the last discussion we had on the capital budget was really great. It says the department heads have given their list. Jerry has gone through the list, and now it's up to the trustees over the next week or two to come up with anything they feel that that needs a higher priority. At that point, you should just turn around and say, okay, these are the top 10 items. This is what we're looking to spend. They're passed. Now, staff, go do these things and give us the parameters of how they're being done. That way, staff can immediately start to work on the list of projects. The second thing is you can have a standby list of projects that if the budget comes in heavier, or if Dan and the goose that lays the golden grant eggs comes in on more projects,
I love that.
then you know, you can turn around and say this is being paid by. And the other thing is to recognize, like things like paving, we have over $1.6 million right now in paving funds. We have an additional $448,000 that is available through the state as of January 1st. Not only do we have CHIPS at 301, we have New York Pave at 81,000, and we have Extreme Paving at 66,000. We also have projects that are coming, things that are coming in that already have grant money attached to them. So one of the things is I would figure out what projects are approved. We have the sidewalks that are approved. We know that's going to cost us $100,000. What the matching funds are, and then go from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we're past time. You've given us a lot to think about, and a lot of work to do. All right.
Before we wrap up, the only question I have is the document we got from the budget committee lists an appropriate debt service as a percent of general budget. The 7.5% sounded like it was somehow set in stone. It seems like it can be a good deal higher than that, as high as 10%.
Well, yeah, I think this is something we have to look at to decide where we are.
Right.
And I would like to know what the bond council thinks, because limiting yourself, it affects them. Mr. Natchez, hands up.
I think, what I think is needed to do is you can get an answer from on the bond council, it'd be very helpful, and maybe Augie, you can do that tomorrow. And we have a couple of meetings, we have another board meeting for work session tomorrow night, and we have another one next week. But I think we need to adopt a policy. I think the budget committee has been very concise in their suggestion, part of which we followed. The target is basically a target. It has not been proposed as an absolute or a finite, limit. It's basically saying, well, if you're going to go beyond that, it's a trigger to look harder at it and make sure that that's what you really want to do. And
Right,
then,
but I also want to know if 8% would be better, would 8.5% be better, would 7 and 5 be better? And we've been given one number, and I'm sure that it has, a lot of good research, but that's the one number we've been given. We have a responsibility to do our own due diligence too.
and we've been doing it for 2 years, Tom. So the
We
question,
haven't talked about doing a number, Dan. That's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, I heard 7.5% the other.
Yeah, and it's not in the
I didn't
document.
know where that came from.
It's not in the document that they gave us. So obviously they wanted us to set our own number. So you might be convinced that 7.5 is the good number, and that might be the good number, but we haven't done the work on that, have we?
it's been in front of us for 2 years.
No, there's no number on this. They took the number out.
And I think whatever the number is, if
Exactly.
7.5 is the number, we typically don't hit that. So it's a cushion number for us. And I think I think from my perspective, we should come to some number so that when we get to it, then there's a conversation about what we should be doing. I mean, I think that's going forward, that's a good idea. And I think we really need to think about, looking at the rankings, looking at the priorities, and really sort of nailing down, what the projects are going to be, because that was this, we started this capital budget project 2 years ago, and it's been a huge project. Now I think we're at the stage where we really need to adopt a plan, and the plan can change, but we owe it to the staff to go through all this work and get to and adopt something, because they have done
I agree.
a tremendous job.
But we can't ad nauseum ask staff questions about 4 and 5 ranked things. So we have to move forward with the 1 and 2s and just say, okay, this is what's important.
I think what we haven't done, because we didn't finish with this last spring, after we did it after the budget cycle, and I think we need to go through the rankings ourselves. Jerry sent an email to that effect today. I think that's something we need to do, and maybe we can talk about that on Tuesday at our last budget.
Why don't we rank ourselves, the rankings, and see where we come in?
Yeah, we should all do our own ranking.
We'll tabulate that number. Dan, wait. We'll tabulate that number at the next meeting. In other words, each of us goes through, the 1s and the 2s, pick out a certain number of that you'd like to see done, put it in the pot, see where we are. Because we have to come to a consensus here. And what happened the times that we were going through it, there were very detailed questions about minutia, and we never got anything done. Speaking of which, go ahead, Trustee Natchez.
Okay, so what I did today to try and help everybody focus on things is I took the Excel sheet that was prepared by staff with Jerry. It had different rankings, but Jerry's rankings went from plus under 100 to over 500. And taking the 500 being the number 1 on the budget committee's hit list, if you will, number 4 being number 2, et cetera. At least that's what he said on last Wednesday. So I took those and I just redid the spreadsheet based upon those numbers, those rankings, just to see what came up on top for number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And that was, I sent you this afternoon, which would help people, focus on which ones you happen to think, should be number one, number two, or whatever.
You sent it to everybody, Dan?
I sent it to everybody.
Okay, that's a basis for discussion. We could have that. We could have that at the end of the next meeting.
One thing to the 2 meetings ago when Tom wasn't here, Victor, is Victor still here?
No.
Oh, Victor had brought up the thing about the dam, putting the dam on capital projects. I mean, is that on there or do we?
It's in the list that I got today.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks.
We should discuss that with the Army Corps.
And I have a question for Dan Sarnoff. When that got circulated, it was a PDF, right? It wasn't an Excel spreadsheet?
That's correct.
Okay.
Would not be today's update. Today's update was just a PDF.
I have to go home because I have to moderate the meeting to the budget committee at 8 o'clock.
It's a busy week. I had 2 meetings too, but not tonight.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Mayor.
I need a motion to, and, did you want to say something, Jerry?
No, it's okay. I'll send an email, but Glenn is an absolute genius because he came up with Golden Goose Sarnoff, and that's exactly what he is. It's exactly what he is.
Golden Goose.
Golden Goose Sarnoff.
He also explained that
My people weren't too happy
better than
with
anybody else.
You are a
Jerry,
genius, my
just-
friend.
My people weren't too happy with golden idols.
All right, I need a motion to end the meeting.
Motion. So moved.
Second.
Augie, call roll.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
trustee Natchez,
Yes.
trustee Lucas,
Yes.
trustee Tofor,
Absent.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye.
See you all tomorrow.
Bye-bye.